Oh, hey, how's it going, man? It's Colin Daniel here from riffninja.com. Okay, common beginner mistakes. Well, first mistake is you want to play what I just played and want to learn it in one easy lesson. You got to be patient with yourself. This is more a talking lesson than a playing lesson, but there's a few things in the playing end that I'll talk about. Rule number one, improperly shaped or sized guitar and the way you sit can cause a huge difference between the way you get onto the guitar or not. I suggest you sit on a fairly firm chair, not the edge of your bed or your softy, cushy couch. Doesn't have to be a really hard chair, but it should be something that's stable, that so you can keep your back straight. There's a whole issue on sitting properly with the guitar. That would take me, I would have to discuss that for about 45 minutes, but one of the most general rules is that you should have an easy time reaching the guitar fretboard with your hand, and that you shouldn't be reaching down a long ways, and you shouldn't lean your elbow up against your leg. I have a rung, like it's a ring around the bottom of my chair that I sit in here, and it doesn't have a back on it, and I adjusted the ring so that my foot on my right leg sits up, and I like my guitar up where my wrist doesn't have to fight, especially when I'm getting like bar chords. And you know, I don't play my guitar with my thumb wrapped around a lot because my speed comes for the picking parts, my speed comes from a better hand technique, you know, and in order for me to have that better hand technique, I can't have my guitar sitting down here. I can't be slouched over. So position is one big mistake, not sitting properly, sitting on too soft of a chair or couch. Setting up the guitar is another problem. And by the way, boys and girls, if you're wondering what that means, I've got a free YouTube video just for you on that. And it's the ultimate buying guide, or the ultimate guide for buying an acoustic guitar, and it's also the ultimate guide for buying an electric guitar. You go check that out on YouTube under Colin Daniel, Riff Ninja, Ultimate Guide for Buying an Acoustic Guitar, or the Ultimate Guide for Buying an Electric, and it'll talk to you all about the action. Action on a guitar is string height. Now, there is a certain amount of personal preference, but the bottom line is that string height will affect whether you can get some chords better than others. Depending on the style of music you play, it might mean the difference between being able to execute certain musical movements or not being able to do them. So check that out for that in the common beginner's mistakes. That's the rules there. So, you know, shape of your guitar like a flying V sucks for sitting down. You know, then you'd have to stand. If you stand, your guitar is too low, there are things in the end that will cause you grief you will not be able to get. And it depends on your physical size too, you know. For me, my rule is however I'm sitting, I like my guitar height when I'm standing approximately the same. And most of the good guitar players don't wear their guitars very low, they wear them higher. And unless you got incredibly long arms like a monkey, I suggest you do that. If your hand stresses too much, especially your wrist and your forearm, you're going to get yourself a thing called tendonitis, or might even get carpal tunnel syndrome. It's quite it's a real problem in the guitar playing world. Now, I've been playing for on 40 years now, and I've never had that problem, and I play on average 8 to 10 hours a day. And because of that, because I'm looking after my hands and sitting properly, you'll have less pain, less strain, and you'll avoid some of the bigger problems later on. If you're an older guy and you're just getting started, or older girl and you're just getting started, then sitting is very important because it'll give you an efficient advantage that you wouldn't have if you were sitting sloppy. So the sitting thing and the size of the guitar is a real problem. Another thing, this is another point to remember, is expecting too much too soon. Meaning, if you start when you're older, you can expect it to take a lot longer than when you're younger. And what you put into it is what you'll get out of it. Practicing issues, that's another thing. You don't have to practice all at the same time, but I just recently had a student that I'd lectured him over the phone because he'd hunted me down, wanted a one-on-one personal lesson. He said to me, I've always wanted to learn to play the guitar. I've had lessons before and they haven't helped me out very much. And I heard about you and I'm wondering if I could sign up for lessons. I said, well, no, you can't sign up for lessons. I'll have to interview you first and see where you're going to fit in with my schedule and see if you're going to fit in, period. And so I gave him a big lecture when I saw him. I lectured him on, look, I can't do my teaching job if you don't keep things steady. For example, I've had students in the past that show up for one lesson and then they're sick or they're gone for 3. Now, I know they can't help it if they get sick for 3 lessons, but guess what? We may as well start all over again because that one lesson isn't going to do them much good. So a steadiness is really important. In the end, the student I'm talking about, I actually decided not to take him on. When he came for his first lesson, this is after I lectured him and said, look, I don't really want to take you as a student. I don't care if you work during the day or whatever. I don't care if you're a real busy guy. You've got to be able to commit to an hour a day. And that's if you want just bare minimum results over a long period of time. If you're older and you're just starting to play and you put 1 hour a day in, expect it to take a long time, especially if you don't practice the right things. So the first day of his lesson, he says, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be out of town for 3 weeks. So here he was going to take one lesson with me and then he was going to be out of town for 3 weeks. And I just stopped it dead there and I said, you know what? This isn't going to work out because I'm going to give you one lesson. I'm not going to see you for 3 weeks. And I'm never going to be able to fit you into my program. So your best bet is to start somewhere else because I can't take a student like that because what I like to do with my students is once I get them started, I like to fit them into a band. But I can't fit them into a band situation if they're only here once a week because first of all, it'll take a year before they're even ready to fit in a band. And then I fit them into a band situation and they're gone 3 weeks out of the month. That's not going to work either because it affects all the members of the band too, plus myself as a teacher. So I guess that's one of the biggest issues for a beginner is the time issue. You got to keep it steady and consistent. You don't have to play your guitar like a straight 2 hours a night. You could hang it on the wall, put it where you can get it easily on a guitar stand. Grab it when you're in the mood, play it 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. The idea is to book as much time as you can in playing. So another thing is not listening or paying attention to how you sound. There's ways to solve that. When you're practicing, you can use a recording device, your computer or whatever you've got, mobile recording device, iPod, whatever it is you got, and you can record things like if you're a beginner and you're working on chords, you can record what your chords sound like and listen back and ask yourself, is this sound like I want to sound like? Does this sound like a good guitar sound? Because if it doesn't, then you're going to have to correct it by listening carefully. And you've got to have some kind of recording device. That really helps a lot. It's one of the greatest teachers, especially if you can't afford or you don't have access to a teacher every week. That's one of your best friends is a recording device. So not listening or paying attention to how you sound, how clear your chords are, how steady your rhythm is. Those are important things. And in with that, I would say, hitting bass strings too hard is a big thing. I get the students when they're first strumming, like say a C chord, and they're hitting that E string, and it sounds horrible. They're getting the first 3, maybe 4 strings, but they're not getting the whole chord. Listen, if you hit or stress that top E string, even though technically an E, the high E is in your C chord, the low E is pretty woofy, and you start featuring it, and this is what happens. But you don't want the chord to sound like that. You want it to sound like this. So again, it's listening to yourself and asking you the question, am I getting this chord? Am I getting all the strings in this chord? Like a D chord is a good example of that. You know, when my students start hitting that E bass note, and you're not hearing the higher strings in the D, it can cancel the whole chord out, especially with an electric guitar. I like it when they hit the distortion pedal and do that. That's just noise. You want to hear this. So, you know, learning to listen to yourself, not hitting the bass strings too hard. You know, pressing too hard is another thing. Like you'll listen to a C chord here. Use just enough pressure to get the chord clear, because listen. See, that sounds out of tune now, but if you listen to this, or even a better example is a bar chord, like say something like this. Boy, that's hard for me to do that. I can't, because the C is the best example. Right now, if I press really hard on the C, it sounds out of tune. And if I take the pressure off, listen, it's much more in tune. You may or may not be able to hear that if you're a beginner, but the truth is that the harder you press, and some guitarists, depending on the types of frets that they have, you'll notice it more than in others. In other words, if you've tuned your guitar already, and then you go to play a D chord or a C chord, and it still sounds out of tune, either you never tuned your guitar correctly, your guitar is mechanically out of adjustment, and you have a thing called intonation, which again you can check out more about on the Ultimate Guide for buying an acoustic guitar, or the electric one if you like, because that talks about intonation in there. But you got to make sure your guitar is in tune. Every time you pick it up, you should tune it before you practice. If you're leaving it for more than a half an hour, check it again before you practice. The guitar goes out of tune. It is a piece of wood. It changes unless you got one of those highfalutin, high-phalangen, high-tech guitars that are made out of Kevlar or made out of some composite material. And they do make some graphite, you know, guitars. They tend to not shift like a wood guitar, but most of us pilgrims have wood guitars. I prefer wood guitars myself. And the other mistake, besides your guitar not being in tune, and that's a terrible habit, because you'll never know what your guitar is supposed to sound like unless you keep it in tune, and you got to pay attention to that. That's why recording is a good thing. It's a real good teacher. And last but not least, you got to learn some theory. One of the first things I have an issue with beginners is they go, I want to learn a song. Okay, so now you're a tape recorder. I've taught you a song and you can repeat exactly what I showed you. But how about learning some theory so you can think for yourself and learn a song for yourself? That would be much better than having to come back to your teacher or me and keep asking to play different songs, instead of spoon feeding you all the time, to actually be able to figure them out yourself. The theory can actually help you that way, and there's a great misconception of theory. Theory does not have to be sight reading or notation reading or even tablature reading. Theory is the mechanics of the guitar fingerboard. One of the best things you can do as a beginner is to learn the notes on your guitar. Search out the lesson tones and semitones. That would help you out with that. I'm going to leave you with those pieces of food for thought. And this goes for either electric or acoustic. Right now I'm on an electric guitar, but this can apply to the acoustic guitar too. That's another common mistake of beginners. I'll add that in as a bonus. It's no more difficult to play an acoustic guitar than an electric. It's no more of a benefit to start on an acoustic than on an electric. It's what you want to play. I had a student come in one time, a female student. She walked in with a cheap acoustic guitar for her first lesson, and I looked at it and thought, oh boy, a really bad acoustic guitar. I don't even want to play this thing. It's not going to stay in tune very well because it's not set up properly. And now I wonder what kind of music she wants to play. So I said to her, I said, well, yeah, there's a guitar, all right. So what kind of music are you interested in learning? Oh, I really love Stevie Ray Vaughan. Oh, I see. So you want to play Stevie Ray Vaughan on this acoustic guitar? Let me see. I know 2 acoustic songs that most people know or have heard by Stevie Ray Vaughan. One is the MTV version of Pride and Joy. It's the unplugged version. And the other acoustic song is Life by the Drop, recorded on his Soul to Soul album. That's it. The rest of them are electric. Listen, honey, you'd better get yourself an electric guitar. Maybe a Strat would be a good idea, since Stevie Ray Vaughan likes Strats, if that's what you're learning to play. Okay, that's my advice for today. Those are some of the mistakes you beginners will make. Get to it. Get on it. Have a good one. This is Colin Daniel from riffninja.com, signing out.